Good morning. Hey, so I have a whole production going on because a friend of mine asked me if I would fix a tear in a leather jacket. Knowing my gifts pulled me out of my gifts, but I'm sitting here looking at this needles, my thread, and my seam ripper, and thinking about my mom and how I learned to do these things from her. So I thought, instead of sitting here and being emotional about it, that I'll just do a little video and show you the work that goes into it. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so here is the tear on the back jacket, on the lower sleeve. This part, it's not as bad as it looks. This is just some cloth from the lining. What I did was I'm going to stitch it, cover up this hole, but what I did, I actually ripped the inside because my plans are to go in through the lining here and hand stitch the leather, which is the part that was originally ripped. I'm going to hand stitch the leather back together from the inside so that there are no seams showing. And I'm going to show you the side that doesn't have a rip. So, okay, this is the side that's not ripped. As you can see, there's no external stitching showing. So I am going to mimic that whole idea by going in through the lining and stitching it from inside and making sure that there are no outward stitches showing. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like in a second. But before I showed you that, I wanted to go into this little tool. This is called a seam ripper. And if you don't have one of these, you need one. If you are a black girl with some black girl magic and you wear sew-ins, you absolutely need one of these. I use this mostly for my sew-ins when I'm taking my sew-in weaves out. I use this to take the thread out. Never use scissors. What this does is it gets the thread. So I'll just zoom in right here. So, you can see, if I can get this to refocus. Zoom, that there is thread here. And what this seam ripper does is goes under the thread so that you can easily separate it and rip it. I'm not going to do an extremely big hole here because my goal is to get to the other side, but I'm just going to show you that I grab the very tiny pieces of thread and just use this to cut that thread so that I can get to the other side of the lining. So this is called a seam ripper. If you don't have one, get one. They sell them at Walmart. They sell them at Hobby Lobby. I think I got this one from Hobby Lobby for like $3. And I have, buy more than one. I think I have like 3. I can't find the other 2. Buy more than one because you will lose them. So never too many of these. All right, let's talk about thread. If you go to Hobby Lobby today, you will see all kinds of threads, and pretty much the standard thin thread is mostly what you'll find generically in the kits. This particular thread is, as you can see on the label here, maybe you can't see because my thing won't focus, but it says extra strong. It says extra strong. I got this extra strong thread because we're gonna need this extra strong thread for this leather in this jacket. I needed something heavy and sturdy, and with that I get to choose my needle. I am not picky about my needles. I pretty much like needles where I can see the eye and thread it, so I try not to go too small. But I know for this I also want some really tiny sturdy stitches. Since I'm not using a sewing machine, I'll show you the kind of stitches that I'm going to use. They're going to be double reinforced and with this extra strong thread, because I don't want this to re-rip, or God forbid if it does re-rip, it's going to rip the leather too. I'm going to sew it that strong. But yeah, so selecting a needle, for me, I like to use time where I can kind of see what's going on. So this one, I think this one will work. It's not too small, it's not too big. As you can see, maybe you can't see, but the eye of this is not too tiny. And hopefully this extra strong thread will go through that hole. I'm gonna spot check it now. Most people would use the threader. I never use a threader. My mom never used the threader. This is how we thread our needles. With the tip. And got it into the hole. Great eyesight is a given. Alright, it's in there. And I'll just pull it through. Never give yourself too much thread. I tend to try to not go past my forearm with the amount of thread that I use. And I always like to double up. Even with this extra strong, I'm still gonna double up my thread and tie my knot off. The other beautiful thing about the seam ripper is that I don't have my scissors on me, so I get to use a seam ripper to cut the thread in and tie my knot, which again, old school spit. I just whip my fingers with my spit and wrapping the thread around my fingers, rolling it, and it creates a knot. Not too much work, not too complicated, right? Alright, so all kinds of stuff going on in the background, sorry. I'm gonna start fixing this now. The wannabe amateur in me would say that I would pin this from the inside before I start sewing, and the professional in me says that I don't have to because I'm going to follow the same seam guides. Now I'm finding that this piece of leather is slightly ripped, so what I'm going to do is put my stitching slightly below that. Or no, I'm going to do double duty. I am going to stitch up. I'm going to clean this up and stitch up this rip and try to make it as close to new as possible. But then I'm going to stitch slightly under where I fixed the rip. Alright. I'll show you that. So, here's the rip of the leather here. And what I'm going to do is just do some simple stitches, making sure I grab both sides of the leather on the opposite ends of the rip and start sewing. Because I don't want to do this again, I am going to keep my stitches nice and tight to each other. So that there is no weak place. I know it's kind of hard to see it. I'll show it to you probably when I'm done. It'll be easier to see it. But I'm not making these huge stitches. I am making really tiny, really tight stitching. And I'm not trying to remove a lot of the fiber from the leather that's frayed, because I don't want to create a future ravel or make it compromise in any way. It's funny, I didn't love sewing as a kid. It's still like not my favorite thing in the world. But my mom found it to be relaxing creatively for her, which I get now when I'm doing other creative things. I understand how these sorts of things can take your mind off of the worries of the world. Like, I'm not thinking about any other things that I need to do or that should be accomplished. I'm really focused on making sure these stitches are neat. I'm focused on making sure that this is secure. And that it's done right. So it's a great distraction. Now this is going to be my last stitch. So I am looping my thread under my loop to create its own knot. And because I am so extra, I am going to do that one more time. And you don't have to snap it like I did. You can create damage if you do what I did. I didn't pull that hard. It just sounded like it. So I've just finished that. I'm just rolling and doing my knot again for my next stitch and sitting my needle away from me. But I'm going to show you that the rip is now stitched. Can't even notice, you don't even notice it on this side. But here it is on the rip side. See how tight these stitches are? It's not gonna rip again. So, now this part is gonna be kind of hard because the leather is doubled up, because this is the start of the actual sleeve on the jacket. But what I'm gonna do, sorry, you can't see. What I'm gonna do is, you see where the rip is, I'm gonna try to keep my new stitches like a centimeter below that. And I am going to make them really secure. This is going to take a while because I'm going to do small stitches on this, because I don't want it to rip again. So this is going to be the fun part. And I need to find where I want to start. I'm just going to use my fingers because it's difficult to see. And what you're seeing me do is I'm starting off with kind of a big loop of a stitch. And then I go back on to the middle of that same loop and loop again, if that makes sense. And I can show you once I get past this exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it that way. It just creates a reinforced type of stitching so that, like I said, we don't worry about this happening again. And even though I can't see and you can't see, I'm actually feeling with my finger where I am in regards to the rip and the fabric. But you'll be able to see where I am in a moment. And I'll show you what kind of stitch I'm doing. The idea is to keep this as straight as possible. Alright, so now we're out of the woods where we can't see, and I can show you what I'm doing. Okay, so here, you can see my thread is coming out of this area here. So what I'm doing is going to the middle of this area, going to the other side of that stitch, okay, and you can see it created a loop here, and now I'm going to do the same. And I'm going to keep doing this in a straight line, and it creates stitch. Straight line of a stitch. Okay. Fuzzies aside. Now you can see my stitches. These are my stitches here. Going up. And you see this thread here. Alright, so I'm going halfway to the other point and then halfway on the other side. So this stitch here is in the middle of my actual needle. And then I'm pulling. And you see my thread moved up, and now I'm going back halfway on the other side of that stitch and going halfway on the other side of that stitch. Oops, can you see that? I'm going another straight line all the way up. Now this rip goes got a ways to go. But I'll show you what it looks like at the end. I can whip through this quicker without the camera. Did I not hit start? Have I been talking about hit start? Okay, so it's all done. These are the stitches I've done here. It's the inside. And I'm going to show you the premiere of the other side. This is where the big hole was. The big hole is no more. It went all the way under the arm here. And now, completely stitched up. It looks just like the other side here. There is no difference between the two. They are done. I'm about to get my needle and rethread it so that I can, since I went in from the inside, I'm going to stitch this back up as neatly as I can, as invisibly as I can, and we'll be done. Yay! And here is the finished inside result. I didn't want like this black line of stitches, but there are underneath stitches that you can't see, and then I whipped them because I didn't want it to rip. And some of it was a little bit compromised, like here you can see, like it had already started to unravel. The fabric started to rip in and of itself, so I tried to not use that side of the fabric, but still stitch it so it's nice, strong, not going anywhere. So yeah, it's all done. Inside and out, finished. Good job, Alicia. You did a great job, girl. Your mommy will be so proud.